Give me the true blood, Suki. Ugh. No guys, what's up? It's me, Troy, and I'm here with another video. And this is gonna be my spring wrap-up. Spring, let me tell you, spring is my favorite season. You know, I love March, I love April, I love May, but this spring it just was not the same. I don't know what happened, but actually I do. Just hold on, I'm gonna show you what happened. This is what happened. This is Unit 1. I am Unit 2. Unit 1 decided to smash into my car and sandwich me between a Jeep, and then domino affected all the way up until there was a grand total of 5 cars in a wreck. So I'm pretty sure her insurance company just dropped her. I will say at this point, all of that stuff is a lot better, and really I'm not a person that accept things like bad days. I'm a very optimistic person. I just let things kind of flow, but at the same time it's hard for me to read a book when I'm being bothered by the fact that my wrecked vehicle is in my driveway and there are people who are trying to report it so that I can get a fine. But anyway, all of that is over with, so that's just part of it. But anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and make this video short by go ahead and sharing the books that I read this spring, I was gonna say March, and I want to thank everyone who's reached out and DM'd me or messaged me in some other platform in which they're saying, Troy, you need to make a video. So I'm sorry, here I am. So the first book that I managed to read this March was Rita Mae Brown's Murder, She Meow. You know, like Jessica Fletcher, Murder, She Wrote, Murder, She Meow. You know, my name is Jessica Fletcher. I love Jessica Fletcher, by the way. I need to catch up on some of Murder, She Wrote. But I have to watch it in the daytime because I get real sleepy at night. But anyway, this is book number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Book number 5, you know I gotta count because I can't keep up with myself. But this is book number 5 in Rita Mae Brown's Miss Murphy mystery series. Now, if you're familiar, if you've been watching my channel, you know that I absolutely love Miss Murphy and her companion, which is a dog named T. Tucker. They are both the pets of a postmistress named Harriet or Harry. Harriet, her 2 pets, they basically solve murder mysteries that take place in this small town called Corzette, Virginia. In this particular book, they solve the murder of a horse jockey that takes place in this barn. His murder is, I'm gonna give it away, but his murder is the result of a batch of greedy ass people who are trying to take over someone's fortune. That's the best way I can keep that a secret. But anyway, if you love cozy mysteries and you don't have a problem with reading mysteries or books that has, you know, that slips into the perspective of animals, then it's a great book for you because I love the series. It really is the definition of a cozy mystery to me, and I just get cozy and warm when I read these books. Even though if I had a real cat or a real dog, my allergies would act up. Maybe it's just me, but like animals, when I'm around a cat or a dog or any animal, just about any animal in general, I get this feeling like I got hair on my tongue. So I be like this, I be petting the dog, I got hair on my tongue. Like for real, I be like that, y'all. Don't mind me. So next I read, girl, I gotta get these words right because there's too many damn words in this title. So hold on a second. Here we go. First grade, Miss Burkett. The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag. Yes, this is book number 2 in Alan Bradley, who is a Canadian author, in his Flavia Deluca mystery series. Now, Flavia Deluca is an 11-year-old English girl who has an affinity for chemistry and solving murder mysteries. She's very precocious. She's very nosy. She would get on her this takes place in the 50s, so she would get on her bike and trowel around the village, sneaking in people's houses, looking through their windows, just getting into all kinds of mischief just to, you know, fulfill the curiosity that is just exploding inside of her. And how in the hell did I just put that? Don't mind me. So, but what happens in The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag is that the murder of a puppeteer happens, and subsequently, you know, Flavia, she decides to investigate the reason behind the murder, and it's an interesting setup And I really like murder mysteries that have a lot of layers to it, and that definitely does. But the problem that I really had with that book is that the actual mystery aspect didn't punch through until 150 pages in. And what I mean by that is that the puppeteer didn't actually get murdered until 150 pages through. So between that time, you're doing a lot of just watching Flavia sort of nose around the village and around the town, picking up information that eventually she sort of transposes into why the puppeteer was murdered and everything later into the book, if that makes sense. But what I will say is that between that book and the second book, the setup from the second book was a lot better. It was just the delivery wasn't as good as the first book. So the third book that I managed to read as April punched through was The Fated Blades' third book, and that is Discipline of the Wind by Steve Bean. As always, I want to call him Stephen Bean, and it's not Stephen Bean like Stephen King, but you know how y'all know how my mind is at this point. If you've been watching my videos, you know I can't keep a sentence straight. But the point that I'm trying to revert to in this video is that this is the third book in his Fated Blades series. Now, as I said before, after reading the second and the first and the second book, is that this series, it's slash historical fantasy slash urban fantasy slash crime thriller. It jumps perspectives, it jumps times. The perspective is between two different protagonists. One, in our modern setting, is a woman, a narcotics detective named Mariko, and in the past, in the historical fiction aspect, it jumps into the perspective of an ex-samurai named Daigoru. Their stories come together through the aspect that they both own an infamous Inazuma blade, and that's an ancient blade that is cursed in the sense that it does things to those who wield it. That's very vague, but there are 4 different Inazuma blades, and these 2 characters, they are the ones that hold the pieces to one particular blade. But anyway, I absolutely love this book. It is the third book, and I think it's the last book. A lot of great things do happen here. The only problem I had is that Steve introduced a third protagonist in the second book, and she does not show. Her narrative does not show in the third book. That's very unfortunate. However, it is released as an ebook. I read Elizabeth Peters' Naked Once More. You guys remember that I did a haul on this book, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to read this book because I don't want this series to end. Y'all know I'm a fan of series because I love characters. I love continuous characters. However, this being the fourth book, I have to say it ended on the right note because this book was very dry to me. After 3 books that were magnificently delivered, we got to this fourth and last book, and it just was not a good read. Basically, Elizabeth Peters' character, which is Jacqueline Kirby, who you all guys know that I absolutely love for her smart ass mouth and her chain smoking, she decides to pick up and continue the sequel of another author's book in which that author had been committed suicide, and it was just a very dry read to me. I think that Peters' publishers, they wanted her to write this fourth book. They made her write this fourth book, if you get what I'm trying to say. They made her write this book because it was not a forget it. And then next I have God Help the Child by Toni Morrison. Now I gotta get this out the way because I made this video and I gotta say this, but here it is. God help the child who has his own. I had to get that out of the way, y'all. I just had to. God Help the Child, this book came out in April. As you all know, it's Toni Morrison's latest book, and I really did enjoy this book. And the reason I enjoyed it the most, well, there's several factors, but the underlying factor is that the brevity of it all was very real in this case. Some of the problems that I have with Toni Morrison post the 80s, her writing post the 80s, is that the prose and the poetry, that stuff kind of gets in the way of me being able to sort of conceptualize the scene that she's creating, you know, in my imagination, and that makes it for a frustrating read. But this one did not have that issue with me. It was very straightforward, you know, with all of the colorfulness that is so standard with Toni Morrison, but it was so straightforward in the fact that the narrative was easy to follow because you're following the perspective of several different characters and how they relate to one another as it regards what happens to people when something bad happens to them in their childhood, and you know how that affects their adult life. Because you know the main character, which is a girl named Bride, and Bride only wears white. She's a dark-skinned girl who as a child she faced like heavy rejection from her mother. Her mother did not want to have anything to do with her, and that goes along with some of the other people of her in her life within her childhood. This in turn causes Bride to make a very awful decision or choice that affects someone else's life, and the book subsequently follows her journey into sort of trying to find acceptance within herself, despite, you know, all of the horrible things that she done in her past, to find acceptance from her mother. And I really enjoyed this book because I can identify with that. You know, it's like that that Whitney Houston song, you know, everybody's looking for a hero, something, you know, it's just like this. And the last book that I managed to read this spring was J.D. Robb's Taken in Death. It is a short story, somewhere in the mix between books 30 and 40 in J.D. Robb's in-depth mystery series. It was a very good short little read, and I'll put the link to that information there. So what is my time looking like? Am I good? Is this less than 5 minutes? I really hope it is. Anyway, I enjoyed you guys so much. Thank you for clicking on this video, and I hope you guys have a great reading summer.